Welcome to another episode of Repair Shop Wrecking. The Race is Zero, brought to you by Garrett Auto and Truck Service and Motor City Truck Collision. I have Marty here today from Martin's Tire and Service.
Look at you.
Yeah, right? We're going to talk about ADAS.
ADAS.
What does ADAS stand for? Because I always mess this up.
Oh, see, now you're going to put me on the spot.
Advanced
Driver Safety Assistance.
Yes. All right. So there's level 1 all the way through 5, and we're going to get to all the different ADASs and stuff like that. But what I like to do is always start out my episodes. Let's talk about your history, how you got into this, because most people, their fathers, most men, their fathers came into it. I've actually met some women that have came into it, been mechanics, but it's a whole nother story.
Right.
So what do you got here?
So kind of the same story. I grew up in it. My dad owned a franchise for many, many years. So I grew up in the industry. I was around it. He was a multi-shop owner for a long time. My experience led me away from kind of wanting to be involved in the shop because he was a technician. He owned it. He ran the front counter. It was one of those, he was kind of like a one-size-fits-all, which I'm sure a lot of us have been at some point. I went into retail loss prevention for about 13 to 14 years and then decided I really liked modifying cars. I liked making them go faster and look cool. So I decided I was going to open my own shop, and he was in a 10-bay building that my grandfather built. And it was split right down the middle. So you had his franchise in the front, and then there was always somebody in the back doing other kind of work. It sat empty for many, many years. So I decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to move into that, and I'm going to start making cars go faster. So we created Martin's Tire and Service as a way to do tires and the stuff that he wasn't doing so that we weren't competing with each other. But our real focus was on performance and making things go a little bit faster. Then he decided he wanted to retire. He was kind of done. He's getting older. He's ready to go. I kind of made an exit strategy plan to try to figure out how I wanted to expand or if I wanted to risk my grandfather putting somebody else in because he was a great human being. That's how I'll leave that. And I actually reached out to him and I was like, hey, why don't I just buy this building off of you? And he was like, hey, no problem. If you want to, you can, but I can't tell your dad's out. Okay, whatever. That's fine. No problem. So I made a couple offers to him. He eventually settled and said, yeah, let's go ahead, purchase the building. So I bought it about a year and a half after that. My dad finally retired completely. He moved out. I knocked down the wall, splitting the building, took over all 10 bays. So we are a full 10-bay facility. And then I decided just to do everything. I was like, there's not really a lot of money in performance. Like people are happy when they hand you that $5,000 bills to make their car go faster. But you make a lot more money in auto repair. So
we've tried over the years to do the lift kits, the steps, the tonneau covers and all that. And you're right, because they say it's a 15-minute installation, but we all know what happens.
You're right.
You're trying to align it. You call and they're like, this thing won't align, blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, you needed these control arms for this model. We didn't do that. And this thing's sitting on your alignment rack for a freaking week. But yeah. So yeah, we've been there too. We don't do that. And I always caution people, like, where Dream Cruise is big by us. So in the summertime, right 2-3 weeks before that, all the guys start calling, hey, will you work on my, this and that? And quite frankly, all my guys are young, so they don't really even know what a carburetor is or point. So I would have to do it. And I'm like, you know what? You cannot charge enough money to work on these guys' cars because number one, they love them to death. And they know every little nick, scratch, nook, and cranny on the car. So,
and they want it perfect.
But they want to pay 1960 prices.
Correct.
Yeah.
So we have Back to the Bricks near us. So that's a big one. It's at the same time as Woodward. And it's the same thing. My dad can rebuild a carburetor, no problem. So like this summer, we got phone call after phone call and he just had a bench lined up with carburetors. Hey, just rebuild all these. We're good to go. He retired. So he just likes to come in and do the hard stuff or anything we can't like hard diagnose. He likes to do a lot of that. But back to the lift kit stuff, we also are right next to a truck accessory place.
Right. So it's kind of, yeah.
But we had a couple accounts that we were doing like 10 to 15 lift kits a week, and we were just pumping them out. They would import them, we would lift them, they would send them down and sell them down south. And that's actually kind of what got us interested and involved in doing the research on moving into ADAS. And I know it's kind of a full circle there, but
not really. Not if you understand why.
That's why we stopped lifting trucks completely, even at 10, 15 a week. We just didn't want to do it anymore because there's so much liability on it.
That's a big thing nowadays, and I did remember hearing on the podcast I listened to about that, about camera angles, stopping angles. Yeah.
So it was, I can't remember exactly what it was, but a gentleman had to lift his Ram, and it had, I think, emergency braking on it. That was the only system. We reached out a couple different places, and we're like, hey, is this an issue? Is there any calibrations? Everybody told us no. Said, okay, so we reached out to the lift kit manufacturer, and we're like, hey, does this need to be done? They're like, nope, it should be fine. There's no reason to do that. Okay, no problem. A couple weeks went by, and that gentleman called us, and he was like, hey, is there anything I need to do with my emergency braking? I said, no, as far as everybody in the industry says, you're good to go. Why? And he said, well, usually when I'm at school picking up my kids, I don't really have to pay attention. I can just roll forward, and the truck will stop itself. And it didn't, and I ran into somebody. I was like, well, that's a different conversation.
Let's go on ahead and unpack what you're literally saying. I don't drive my truck, and I ran over a kid, and you're on the other end of the...
Right.
Hello, you there? No, I'm laying on the ground.
So we did a little bit more research into it, and sure, there actually is no information about that out there, because it was at that time, not everybody was talking about it. So that made me kind of go down the rabbit hole of, let me see what else we need to get into here, because obviously we don't want to be responsible for making a vehicle not work. Come to find out, that gentleman decided to take that truck and make it an off-road only. So at this point, it's not really in our hands anymore, so I don't have to worry about it. He completely gutted it, took the radar off, took the bumper off. So that's what he was doing with that truck. Perfect. So I was like, cool. But then we started looking into it. We're getting Denali's, coming in fully loaded with lane assist and auto self-adjusting cruise control. And we're like, all these angles are different, right? So we started doing a little bit of research, and come to find out, there is a big thing. SEMA is actually doing studies on it right now, that when you lift a truck, the angles are off, and it's not accurate, and you're not lowering the camera. So a lot of things get off, and it's not recommended. So that's what kind of got us into the ADAS game.
Let's go back to the Denali Ultimates, because I have one. Mm-hmm. My son has one. He's a 17-year-old. He's like, I want to lift my truck. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, you don't want to lift your truck. Dad, but I think I do. No, you don't. Me being a mechanic all these years, as far as I can see, the truck's going to drive like shit. It's going to it's going to follow the road. It's going to be horrible. And then he was telling me, we started looking at YouTube on some of the different, they say on some of the Sierras, you have to cut the frame.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
So can you explain that to me? Because I didn't go any further with it.
So it depends on how high you're going. So if you're just going to do like a level kit or something like that, most of the time it's a couple pucks, you throw it in there, the struts are good, have a nice day. Still throws everything out of whack. If you're going usually about 4 inches or higher, you sometimes have to cut the subframe. So basically cut the subframe, you put new brackets in to drop your entire suspension so that the suspension drops and all your angles are correct. Once you cut the subframe, the only way to go back is to weld it back in, and then it probably will never be right again. So we always cautioned against it. And usually when people want a 6-inch lift, they're like, whatever, 6-inch lift, that's cool. I ain't never going to take it off. Great. Have a nice day. But making all those adjustments, you have to recalibrate your camera. You have to recalibrate your front radar. Any blind spot monitors realistically should auto-calibrate on those specifically. However, the angles are still wrong. So it's going to see something that may not potentially actually be there.
Yeah, I watched a video on it because I've been trying to do my homework a little bit. And then I think about stuff like my one Denali Ultimate, I got rear end, it had 1,200 miles on it, smoked in the rear end. And I know it had LiDAR sensors in the corners of the bumper.
Yep.
And we put it all back in, and they had to be programmed. And everything would work, but the truck would not switch lanes by itself with Super Cruise until they programmed it. And that's when I learned about LiDAR, and I'm like, man, look at all the sensors in this truck. And I mean, Super Cruise works fantastic.
Right. And it's all sensor fusion. So if something's not working, it's telling the system, hey, don't do this because I can't see.
Right, like when you hook a trailer to it, it will not change lanes by itself because it cannot see. So lifting a truck is basically, you cannot get the camera angles right ever again.
Correct. You can technically, and again, this is where some controversy probably will come up, you can technically still calibrate it, and you can technically get a successful calibration, but it's wrong. You can get a successful 100% calibration, but it's still wrong. And what that really breaks down to is a couple of examples that some of the courses I've went to, and there's a lot of good trainers out there that I recommend people listen to, like about ADAS specifically. I am by no means a 100% like expert in it, but I've been in it long enough that I know the systems, right? The the biggest thing is take your phone, for example. You zoom all the way in looking through the camera, right? You can see from me to you perfectly. But if you move that phone just barely because you're zoomed all the way in, it's looking over there now.
Absolutely.
So you have to keep that in mind when the camera on your car, or the radar the same, is doing the same down the road. You going down the road straight, looking at that camera, it sees the car in front of you. But if you're off by even a degree, because now you're looking 2 miles down the road, you're not looking 3 feet in front of you, that camera's not looking straight at the ground. It doesn't see whatever's coming up until that gap closes, and it can see straight down, and then it sees the car. So now the reaction time is slower. All the other systems aren't working as quickly because it doesn't see that car coming.
Wow. So, yeah, lifting a truck is really not the greatest thing if you have like a Denali Ultimate. What does it do? Super Cruise and all that stuff work okay still?
Okay, no, probably not. It's not going to see the car until you're right up on them. It will probably still work to a point, but it's not going to work the way it was designed.
Right. And I'd imagine you being a shop owner, when we start talking about liability, because let's face it, everybody's out nowadays to get the money off the other guy, easy money, right?
Correct.
And these insurance companies basically just give out money versus going to court. So you don't want your shop, lifting a truck. So, I mean, that says a lot, because if you're banging 15 out a week, you're making bank.
Oh, yeah. No, it was good money. It was good money. But the liability shift, I couldn't justify it.
Well, that's where, in my opinion, where shops like you or me, guys will actually think about stuff like that versus the money. Okay, that you're a good operator. You know, you're smart. Like me, I could show you my repair. I wrote a terms of service. I had a lawyer write a terms of service on my repair order. It's like 2 pages long, but it's like people have to sign and be responsible. They can't always expect us as shop owners to take the responsibility. You know, I always tell this story. There's a dealership in California. The lady came in and she had a tire going flat, and she came to the dealer, and the tire was bald, and she didn't have no money for tires. So they plugged it. She went down the road. The tire blew up. Who knew if it was because of the plug or not?
Sure.
They sued, and they went to court in California. Guess what the judge said? You're the professional.
Yep.
You should have stopped her. And the guy's like, well, I can't. They're like, nope. And they awarded like millions of dollars.
Yep.
And that's the problem. Well, they would do to us, do to you.
Every time we have something that comes up that's even slightly questionable, we say that exact same thing. We're the professional. How are we liable for this? So even if the customer says no, or just do it anyway because that's all I have, we will actually turn repairs away because I'm not taking the shift. I just don't care.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you. And that's when and this goes back to being a good operator. You know how to price your stuff. I've already talked to you about, a little bit, and I already could tell you already know how to price your stuff. You know your place in the market. And this is what a lot of shop owners, in my opinion, don't know. They don't know if they want to be the cheap shop or the most expensive shop.
Right.
It depends on how their bank account looks that week.
Right.
Right? And if you are a good shop operator, you're going to have money in reserves, so you don't have to worry about losing a brake job, turning one away. Well, the guy down the street will do it for $10 cheaper. Well, then you need to go to him. And when he screws it all up, let me know, and we'll go ahead and take care of it. I will tell you, Mr. Customer, it's going to be more expensive when you bring it back, because we're going to uncluster fuck what he did.
Got to do it twice.
And that's kind of what's going on. And I'm sure early on, and you can tell me if I'm crazy, when you start a new business, when you quit your loss prevention job and you opened your own shop, you had X amount of dollars.
Yep.
So you were pretty much like, okay, I'll do that.
Yep.
Okay, I'll do that. Because you're like, I'm broke.
Yeah.
So I can't fail if I'm a normal man, which I'm not failing. My dad's right there. He's been successful. There ain't no way in hell I'm letting this go down in flames.
Exactly.
So I'm going to keep doing this. And once you start realizing, well, if I buy an alternator for $50 and sell it for $100, I'm not making enough money still to pay everything.
Right.
And that's how, with me, it led me into going to training, to courses, to ongoing training to learn all this stuff.
Yes.
Because there's 2 parts of our business.
Yeah.
Well, actually, there's like 100 parts of our business, but we have to know how to price this stuff.
Yep.
And we have to know how to deal with all the little crybabies that work for us.
Yep.
Crybabies usually don't last with me. They probably don't really stick around with you either.
No.
I always tell everybody in a job interview, like, I want good people. If you're an asshole, we're gonna expose you real quick, and you're probably gonna be on your way.
Right.
And some of the worst guys I've ever had, prima donnas, are dealer guys. These guys don't want to work.
Yeah, I can honestly say we've never hired anybody from the dealer. All of ours have always been independent, so I can't really speak to that specifically. We are actually trying to look for some new techs, which who isn't? So we're kind of dabbling into all that also, just to kind of see where that shift comes from too.
Yeah, it's interesting. We'll have to have another podcast. You can call me after you hire some of them because they're so used to having a guy selling their stuff, and it's just crazy. They could do a whole other podcast on it. I'm not saying all dealer techs are bad because the older ones obviously worked and did very well. It's these young guys that don't. They come in with their Target tools. They're 21 years old as a lube tech. They have a freaking crotch rocket. They live with their mom and dad, and they're on the brink of bankruptcy. And you're like, you need to buy an oil filter wrench. What? I don't have that kind of money. It's like, what?
And then you get on the forbidden step, and then you have your monthly payments.
The forbidden step. That's a good one. Snap on. After this step, it's consent.
Yep. We call it the forbidden step.
So that's so funny because I bet you, honestly, not exaggerating, I probably paid the Snap-on and the Mac-O Man and the Mac Man $20 a week for 20 years. It was like till that point where I was like, I just have all the tools, and then it gets to the point where you're cocky. You're like, well, that's a badass new electric impact.
Yep.
Give me that bitch right there. I don't owe you no money. And here you go down. It's like a crack pipe.
Yep. It's funny because a lot of the times, a couple years ago, one of the things that's really cool is my entire staff has been with me for almost our entire existence, right? So we've gone through a lot of people. We've tried to expand a little bit. They didn't work out, but like you said, we don't really like the woe is me. Everything is terrible. I get all the crap jobs. We live in Michigan. They're all crap jobs. It's rust. There is no easy gravy jobs, really, when you sit down and think about it. Sure, brakes and stuff. Absolutely. Tires, to me, are technically gravy. It's easy. Rip the tire off, put it on. It's annoying, yes, but just do it. Everybody hates doing tires. So we've had a lot of that, but every one of our guys has been with us long enough that you kind of see that progression, right? So we're like, hey, you're moving into this role. You're going to start buying tools. Oh, I'm going to go to the truck this week. I'm going to go to the truck this week. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Like, you don't need that yet. Like the shop provides that. You don't need your own yet. But if you use it more than we usually say about 5 times, you should buy your own. Use it once a week. Just relax for a minute. Don't make your payment more than your paycheck. Right.
Because it happens fast.
Oh, yeah.
It happens fast. So we had touched a little bit on the certification stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. And that is an ongoing problem for everybody that owns a shop.
Yes.
You get good people, and I'm going to say this, and I was one of them. You get guys that have learning disability type personalities. As you know, mechanics are independent thinkers. 9 times out of 10, if you talk to them, they were terrible students in school, but they could literally take apart something and put it back together.
Right.
Pretty easy.
Right.
Like they're definitely skilled at it, which I found very interesting. But then you put them a test in front of them, they lose their shit. I was one of them. I started taking my test back when I worked at Hal's Auto Clinic years ago, and I never was a master until a couple of years ago. I just took them all and then. But I've had problems with my guys doing tests. So what I did is took my books out from college, and we would go through the brake system.
Yep.
Basic brake systems. Okay, now everybody go take their test. They would pass it. Maybe they'd have to take it again or whatever. They missed it by a couple things. And then we kind of went that way to get these guys certified, because what I find funny with state certifications is our government isn't certified. And it's clear they're a bunch of clowns, right? But they make us all be certified. Why? It's a money grab, because Michigan's one of the only states that have to have a mechanic's license.
Yep, with the BAR. You got Michigan, New York, and California, I think.
Yeah, thank God Michigan or New York and California. You listen to that bullshit, the inspector tags they have to have, and they're responsible.
Now, I think we're getting off track of the ADAS. I wouldn't be opposed to it based on some of the cars that we see that are unsafe all the time, and just people don't want to fix it. So it depends on kind of where you stand on that, because if I got a car that comes in, the brakes are falling off, technically I can't hold that vehicle. I can't prevent that person from leaving. They're going to leave and the brakes aren't working, and they're driving next to you and your family.
Absolutely. And that's why I love DOT inspections. Yeah. DOT inspections are a great thing. I think we're going to get to the ADAS part of everything, but I was kind of trying to preface everything. I love talking to other shop owners to hear their perspective on a lot of stuff. And we all, years ago, we did a free oil change.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That was the worst mistake of my life. I got a bunch of people that wouldn't fix shit, and their tie rods are falling off, their brakes are grinding. We don't care. We want that free oil change.
Every time.
So
mailers are kind of the same way, right? Like we do mailers. I'm sure you do mailers. Some people get great responses from them. Some people don't. And we get a decent response from ours. but all the customer wants is the oil change, which is fine. Hey, we got a touch point. We got to have a conversation with the customer, show them our level of service and how it differs from everybody else in our area. They see our loaners when they pull in, wrapped in our logo and everything, so they know, oh, if I come here, I can get something fixed. Now, are we going to win every single customer? No, because kind of like we talked, I know I am probably the most expensive shop in town. I know that. But because of the value we've added to every single service for every single customer, there's a reason for that, including, like you said, certifications. So we spend a lot of time, and I pay for all certifications at my shop. If you come to me, I require you to be ASE certified. I require you to be state certified, as does the state, right? I want you to have both. And now if you have just ASE and the state will grant you
they still do that, yes, right?
Yeah. I'm cool with that. But you have to be ASE certified to work with us. Even our front counters are certified, whether it's service writing, parts, brakes, whatever they want to do, they're required to do it as well. Because if everybody's on the same page as far as what's expected, then when we're explaining that to the customer, there is no miscommunication. There is no gap, right? Do I think each one of my techs is proficient in the areas that they're all certified in? No, some are probably stronger in this area, but don't really get enough of this to kind of dive deep into it, right? So yes, they're certified in it. If I give it to them, could they fumble through it? Sure, figure it out. Yes. But the team that I want to build and continue to build is one that wants to continue to learn and wants to continue to grow with all the new, not only technologies, but even ADAS. When they're diagnosing problems, if they don't know how the ADAS system works, they might be fighting a system they don't understand because it does a whole bunch of stuff to make sure that truck or vehicle is going down the road straight.
Right. And if they weren't trained, a guy brings his truck with a lift kit in and they try to do this, that, and the other thing, you're going to stop them. Now they've all been with you. They're going to be like, wait a second here, no matter what we do. Because there's a lift kit place across the street from us, and I was going to maybe have that guy on, just to talk about lift kits, but it's just like, that's crazy.
Some people don't care. And you'll never hear me speak bad about any shop. Doesn't matter if I like them or not. I think everybody's great. Everybody's going to do their thing. But if you're not staying on top of the ADAS and you're not checking these things when you're doing repairs or lift kits or whatever you're doing that will affect that system, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, I've been here, and I don't badmouth shops either. There's some shops around me that, whatever, but they don't have our level, and their pricing reflects it. Or you call these shops that are out of town, and you're like, hey, I'm so-and-so, I have a warranty there, and you're like, immediately know if the guy's full of shit or the guy's cool, like, oh, hey. Yep. And, if somebody calls me with the problems that we did, I'll talk to them or whatever, and I try to give other shop owners the same courtesy.
Sure.
Hey, I got this guy down here saying this about you. Well, hey, wait a second, here's the other half of the story. You're like, you know. So you had to buy the ADAS system.
Yes.
So you didn't have to, but you're like, okay, this is the next step.
Oh, no, I had to. Once I saw it, I had to.
So which system did you get?
I have the Altel IA 900WA. So the reason for that, little bit of backstory. I was at a training seminar. I think it was STX, actually. And I was down there looking at it, and I was talking to my guys, and we really wanted to get into it. And I have a pretty good relationship with a lot of our parts suppliers. I'm also a TechNet ambassador for that program, so I have some good connections with those guys. And one of the equipment guys was like, you need to get into this. This is awesome. Check this out. Let me explain all this to you. We spent 4.5 hours in his hotel room with him and another part specialist, and just talking about all the different liabilities and the things that could go wrong with the lift kits. And that's kind of what really
scared the shit out of you.
I was just like, man, I never thought about any of this. And it was like, okay. And they weren't really trying to scare me into it. I was trying to buy a new alignment machine anyway. And I was like, if it's a 2-for-1, I mean, I might as well just buy the one machine and be able to do both things.
Right. So real quick, what liabilities can you think of pop off the top of your head for lift kits? Because I want that out there.
So like the emergency braking is the biggest one. So if a vehicle comes in to us, if we're talking lift kit specifically, you lift that vehicle, that radar can't see the car or person in front of it anymore because it's now 6 inches off of its axis. It doesn't see what's there, and you run over a kid or you hit somebody else, and that vehicle, you kill somebody. Technically, if the lawyer wanted to, which now luckily there's no case law on this yet, from what I've heard, they could technically come back at you because you're the professional. You lifted the truck, you modified it in a way that was no longer the way it was originally built, and then you did not recalibrate the safety system that's mandated by the government now to be able to work properly. So you're the professional. You should have known better. It all kind of comes back to that. So Could they hold you liable? Yes, absolutely, 100%. Have they yet? I haven't seen it yet, but I also wouldn't hold it against them.
Well, when you said the guy rolled forward and hit somebody, I was like, my heart was like, oh, because you just know what's coming. Yeah, hello, this is so and so from Schneider and Schneider. We need to talk about your lift kit practices, or you get the ladder, stick them up ladder in the mail.
Now, luckily, we did kind of protect ourselves with that a little bit, because when we first got into it, I was a little nervous about the systems in general because I didn't understand them, and not every vehicle was coming with it yet. So we were doing like XLT Fords and base model Chevys and stuff like that. They didn't really have a lot of that. So on every lift kit, we always had a waiver like, hey, this is for off-road use only. We do not recommend driving on the road, which nobody uses it for off-road use. They lift their car because they want their truck to be lifted. They want to put 35s on it with 20-inch wheels, 19 offset, negative 19 offset, like just look cool. So we very clearly laid that out. Would it technically violate anything as far as if they're off-road or not? I don't know. But we wanted to protect ourselves liability. Like, hey, look, we told this customer this is for off-road use only. Do not drive it on the road. We're covered as far as I understand that the way the law works in that. So when that happened, that was the very next phone call was to the manufacturer, like, what's going on? They're like, oh, no, there's absolutely no problem. And then after I did my research, I realized the manufacturer has no idea that they may be opening themselves up for liability because there's nothing in the instructions. There's nothing anywhere that says these systems may need to be calibrated, because right in the very first sentence, it says off-road use only. So that's how they kind of skate that.
So putting bigger tires on still changes the cameras. Taller tires.
Yes.
How does it affect it a ton?
There are tolerances, usually between 1 to 3 degrees, plus or minus. So you can adjust for that. I know Ford's has an internal adjustment for that. Did you put larger tires on and you do the measurements and it will do that? And I believe it's up to 4 inches. Don't quote me on that specifically, but the last I looked, it was like 4 inches.
Yeah, because that plays in part with the ABS and everything else. When we were in our scan tools, I know we could change tire size because it was changing lockup and everything, because the speedometer on these transmissions were overheating when these guys were putting bigger tires years ago.
Right.
They're burning up transmissions, and they're like, okay, you put bigger tires on. You have to go in your master tech and pick the tire size. And all right.
So there are some adjustments for that. So they are tolerable to a point. But it's once you start doing like the 2 to 3 to 4 inch lift kits and stuff like that, it's you're in dangerous territory.
All right, so let's go back to your buying a 2-for-1 alignment rack. Now that we just kind of went off again.
Yeah, spending the time with them basically was that, and I went back and forth on all the different brands. And the thing that I liked the most about the Altel, again, no paid sponsorship here, but I have spoken on it a lot.
You're a fanboy
because I use it. I love it.
Right? Yeah. Sure.
The IA 900. The old school way, you had to measure everything, right? You have to find center line, plumb bob it. You have to measure everything out on the vehicle, get your center, adjust it, make marks out from certain points on the car. It was a lot of work.
That was one of the biggest complaints with the ADAS calibrations before they started doing it, is how much room they take up.
Correct.
Okay.
So for me, I was like, I don't have that kind of time. We're not a body shop. I just want to be able to align a vehicle and then make the proper adjustments if I need to. The IA 900 does all that for you. It literally does all of the measuring, tells you where to put it, what to do. Now, are there still some where you have to manually measure it? Yes. It's not a do-all perfect machine, but it eliminates most of it. So like 360 cameras, you still have to measure stuff out. Front camera, it'll say, put it here, turn on your laser. There's a little dot right there, park it. Okay, put the target on it. It'll lift up to where it needs to be. See it. Give you your adjustments if any are needed, tell you if it's successful, and then you're on your way.
So these cameras, when you adjust, like we'll just say a GM truck, the front camera, is it a software adjustment or is it a mechanical adjustment?
My assumption is, and again, this is just an assumption, I think it is an internal software calibration.
Okay.
So because again, it's using everything around it to know, okay, I need to look this way. So everything here is an object that I need to see.
Okay.
So if the target is to the left, and it sees it over there, it's going to think that's the center line of the road. So it knows, okay, I'm going to look over there now, that's the center. And if it's off, you're going this way, going straight ahead, but it's looking off to the left. It's seeing everything over the left, and it's going to start braking.
And that's where your alignment is a big part of calibration.
Yes. I've been in the ADAS game for just over a year now, but I have gone to every training I can. I've made friends with so many people in the industry that are like, this is how you do it wrong, this is how you do it right. There's a lot of back and forth. I've gone to the Altel training in New York, spent 2 days there with a couple of my guys, met with other body shop owners, and the amount of information and networking that I was able to do there gave me what I needed to be able to say, hey, you know what? We know how to do this now. We spent 2 days there, did that, came home. I had one question, called a body shop that I met from Florida and was like, hey, real quick. He's like, yeah, no problem. This is how you do it. Great. And then from there, it's like, oh, this is actually really easy. It's a somewhat easy process to get going. Are there things that you're going to have to dive into to try to fix calibration angles, things like that? Yes. Diagnostic of why the radar is not working or not calibrating right. Sure. But it all does come down to the alignment.
This is one of the reasons I was talking to you, like, I own a body shop. How the hell can these guys come in with the little handheld scanners and then put a windshield and align the cameras? They charge $150 for it. Is that process even worth a shit?
So this is where I'm sure there'll be some controversy.
Good.
And
controversy
right?
gets us likes.
So
go back and forth.
So the right way to do it is to make sure that the angle and the thrust angle are as close to zero as possible, right? You want that vehicle going straight. If it is off in any way, if it's been in a collision and it hasn't been aligned yet, do some cameras have some variations for that? Yes, but it's, again, plus or minus 3 degrees. So you can kind of play with that a little bit. The camera is going to adjust if it knows that it's off slightly, depending on the vehicle. And tell me if I'm wrong. I know who you are. If you're just coming in, you're doing the calibration, and then you're aligning the vehicle, the calibration is worthless at that point because the calibration went off of where it thought the vehicle was already.
Right.
They have dynamic and static, right? So dynamic means you plug in your scanner, you put it into learn mode, you drive it, and the vehicle itself looks for the lines on the road and calibrates itself. No problem.
That might be what they do.
Yeah, that should be no problem. Realistically, it should be no problem. However, if the thrust angle is still off, there could be some variations and the system won't work as intended. It may still work, but again, it'd be just like you lifted a truck. It's going to work, but not quite as well. The nice thing with the body shops we work with specifically, they put everything back to OEM and they don't really skimp. I don't have to worry about an aftermarket piece of glass coming in that the camera can't see through. And it's something to do with the film. I don't know the exact reason why, but for some reason the camera just can't see through whatever film the aftermarket, cheaper windshields are. Especially in like Subarus. Like Subarus are so finicky and touchy. If you touch the camera, you have to replace the camera.
Yeah, holy shit. It's crazy how technical it is.
Yeah, for sure. I think the big part about it is, in a body shop sense, realistically, every car probably needs to be calibrated. If you look at OEM recommendations, position statements, it says if any, for instance, one of my guys actually just got rear-ended in his Buick, what are those things called? Envision. Rear-ended. Body shop is going to bring it back to us for calibrations because it's our car. We do their calibrations for it. So we quoted out everything in the rear because it got hit in the rear. But we used some software that did some scrubbing and saw everything that they were fixing. And GM's position statement is if the vehicle has sustained enough damage to where body repair is required, front camera calibration is required. Front camera had no impact, no issue, didn't do anything. The rear got rear-ended. So we wouldn't have charged for that. We wouldn't have even thought to do it. But GM says you need to do it. So now we have to redo all the rear cameras, blind spot sensors, all that in the rear, plus the front, even though the front wasn't affected. So even if you don't think that you need to do it, chances are you do. I think Hondas, if you take the driver door off, you have to recalibrate the front camera.
So this is where I believe the insurance companies are going to cause themselves some problems with their new AI, how they do these AI estimates and all that crap. They don't want to pay for something 99% of the time. Yeah, they're just like, no. Yeah. You have to literally fight with them. And then if you pull up the GM or Ford, whatever, repair procedures, okay, they really can't argue with it, with you. You know what I mean? So my thought is on me from now on going forward, if something's getting a windshield that's got a camera in any of my shops, it's getting an alignment first, and then obviously I don't have the ADAS stuff. And for me, I really don't need it right now because I do medium and heavy trucks.
Sure.
There's just not a lot into it, right? Sounds to me like if I really needed it done right, I'd bring it to you.
Yeah.
How far
anytime.
are you from from?
I think we're less than 40 minutes.
Okay, so I just bring it to you and have you do. How long does it take to do?
Depends.
Full.
Depends on the calibration. Usually we can have them done in a couple hours. It's really not that big a deal, depending on if you have to do multiple calibrations. But there's a charge for each calibration also. So the biggest issue is the customer side of things. The customer facing, you come in to get your car fixed with me, or you need an alignment, right?
Right.
I'm going to do your alignment. It's an hour and a half, however long it takes. But then your vehicle now requires an ADAS calibration. But because shops out there don't do it, aren't teaching about it, don't know what's going on with it, my price for an alignment is now from $140 to $300 because I have to calibrate all of your front end systems. But somebody up the street will do it for $90 and not calibrate anything. So there's a little bit of customer learning, right? Customer teaching that you have to do now because people don't understand what they bought. So when they have a new vehicle, you have to go through that. So yes, it will take an extra hour to do this calibration after your 1 hour alignment. So now you're here for a couple hours. Same thing with, like you said, body shops or whatever. Depending on the calibration, it could take a half hour, could take an hour and a half. 360 cameras, I think usually on average take us about 2.5 to 3 hours. Cause again, you have to measure everything out. You have to lay out all the targets, do your calibration, take it for a drive. If it's still not right, do it again. But it takes a little bit of time.
What is a full, like say a F350 Platinum with every camera known to man or a Denali? What is that price of that? Give me a ballpark. It don't matter.
We don't do those only because I don't have the space for that specific one. But you're probably looking in the $2,000 to $3,000 range per calibration, like per truck.
Right. So so you bring the insurance company in there, and they're like, okay, we don't want to pay that much for a calibration. You're like, yeah, tough shit.
Yep. So
where do they go?
For us, a lot of the times what we hear is, well, the dealer would do it for $100. Okay, sure.
3,000 down to $100.
Oh yeah, I hear it all the time. But then you also hear that the dealerships they're printing off their targets. They're doing it out in the parking lot. And this is, again, more controversy, right? All the professionals that I look up to in this industry say doing it in the parking lot is wrong. You shouldn't do it. There should be no glare. There should be no sunlight. It should be a controlled environment so that the camera can see what it needs to see. So if they don't have the space to do it, they do it in the parking lot, which it's unlevel. There's other stuff around, other vehicles. The sun could be out. It could be raining. I've seen some pictures. So there's a lot of controversy around that.
Me being a customer, me being the guy I am, even if I wasn't, I'm like, okay, you're 3,000 and he's 100, but he'll do it in his parking lot for $100.
Right.
Well, why wouldn't he do it behind the liquor store for 50?
Right. Right. And the insurance company say that we don't care. Take it over there.
Right, because the liability is now on you. Yeah. And this funny thing is, I've talked about this. The insurance company tells you where to buy the part, what to charge for the part, and guess what you get to do? You get to warranty the part.
Yep.
And that's kind of the whole thing with calibrations. I mean, if it really came to a huge lawsuit on something, they're going to come back to you and say, okay, let's see your calibration data. You're going to say, here it is, per GM spec, per whatever manufacturer spec. Or they're going to go to the dealer, and the dealer's going to be like, well, we did it in our parking lot for $100. We have this piece of paper we wrote out with a crayon.
So one of the, you mentioned the AI building, and one of the things that we just recently partnered with is a company called Rev. I don't know how new they are, but what they do is they AI scrub like your estimate. So your body shop, you would send it to me and say, hey, we have this car here. This is everything we're doing to it. Now, technically, we can connect to your CCC with Rev automatically. So you put an estimate in, it'll automatically pull the VIN, it'll see everything that you're doing to it, and then it'll say, these are the calibrations that need to be done. Here is a hyperlink to the OEM requirements for this and why we're recommending it. And then it's all laid out with a bill at the bottom for you to submit to the insurance with the estimate.
So what I could use this with any shop management program because I do not have CCC because I think it's, from what I will tell you this, and okay, I'm going to get flamed now. I believe the insurance companies call up these companies and say, okay, we're going to help you build this program. It's going to be to our benefit. We're all going to screw the body shops. Because I'm going to tell you, most body shop owners are not businessmen. Yeah. Okay, so they run on razor thin margins, which I'm shocked.
Right.
Like 10% net at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Okay,
because they're being controlled by the insurance.
Exactly, and I have done research and asked other body shop owners. Some of them can't even tell you what they make on a job. When they do an estimate, they don't even know. Okay, I just had one, a friend of mine's daughter car, and it was like $8,000 estimate. It was an ass pack, and the prices they wanted versus what my costs were, I was going to make $400 on that job. So I ended up calling a friend of mine that owns a collision shop at Farmington, who's a direct. I said, hey, I'm shipping her down to you. I cannot even do this job for the money they want to pay. Let me tell you something. There's a lot of guys out there, and you probably know some of them that own body shops. They'd be like, hell yeah, I'll do that $8,000 job.
Yep.
Okay, but years ago when I went to a Management Success and all that, they're like, you're better off leaving the money in your bank account than doing the job. You will be farther ahead sitting on a bucket for 4 days than what it took you to do that. And I'm sure in your shop, what shop management program do you use?
TechMetric.
TechMetric, which is kind of like Shopwares. I have Shopwares.
Oh, nice.
Same type of thing. You send a link to get approvals, pictures, all that type of stuff. Well, I want to thank you for coming on.
Absolutely.
Marty from Martin's Tire and Service, right?
Yeah.
This is going to be the ending. Cool. We're going to cut this in half. We're going to do a part 1 and a part 2.
Sure.
So this is the end of part 1, and coming up in a couple weeks will be part 2. Thank you for coming on, Marty, and have a great day.
Absolutely. You too.
All right.